Interesting question. I've read through the recent Germination magazine, and of course have been very aware of the position that's being taken in wheat by companies such as Monsanto, Bayer, Dow, and Syngenta. The CDC has a very substantial germplasm base in all of the crops in which we work. We've been in the business for 40 years, longer in some crop kinds. In addition, we work in collaboration with private and public sector organizations around the world via germplasm transfer agreements. And they're usually mutual, and if they're not mutual, they don't last very long, frankly. So it is a two-way street. And what those do for us is to bring new alleles of genes, existing genes, into our system for testing. So new disease resistances, new quality attributes, height, all of the different quality and agronomic factors that we may be looking for. I don't see this as changing. Something that concerns me within that is the concept of patenting of varieties, which is also being discussed as an intellectual property tool. At its worst, this can serve to be actually blocking of genetic improvement in that it takes varieties out of the ability of a breeder to gain access to an improved variety for a crossing parent or use in a breeding program. So to me, that at its worst can be counterproductive to the overarching goal, which is genetic improvement. In terms of traits, and I'm assuming you're meaning transgenics in the use of the word traits, in other words, genes from one organism inserted into another. We are not currently involved in transgenic work, but we are very involved in genomics, in marker development, in identification of certain regions and sequencing of certain regions of genes, identification of where genes lie, and what phenotype they may be responsible for. And in my mind, as crop genome sequences become available, and we know that the canola sequence has now been completed, and we know that the flax sequence has now been completed, to me that just opens up new doors, huge opportunity for our plant breeders all across the country in terms of gene identification, marker development, looking for new alleles in old varieties, and you can go back into time and pull forward materials that for some reason or other didn't continue, or very old varieties, sort of the heritage varieties. You can look in wild germplasm, far-reaching relatives of the crop, because there are no new genes, there are just different phenotypes of the genes. So you can find a new allele, or an old allele, or an allele in a wild relative that you can bring in, and it'll be much easier to locate those now that we're beginning to understand the sequence of the genome. That also allows us to consider things like up and down regulation of genes, which is also, some people would call that transgenics as well. And so, to me, there's huge opportunity. I believe that it's very important that there be new investment and continuing and increasing investment in the crops that we grow, because it is a numbers game, and the plant breeding is a numbers game, and the pre-breeding is required to keep the crops improving, let's say, and bring value to the farmer and to the agri-industry.
Super.